Are you a complete disaster of a person? Are you barely getting by, living in a cloud of chaos and total failure? Well, congratulations. You're still way ahead of Disco Elysium's main character. This guy wakes up not just broke, hungover as hell, and pantsless, but also with no memory of his own name, job, or the fact that he's supposed to be solving a murder case. If you think your life's messy, wait until you meet this walking existential crisis. But somehow, this absolute train wreck of a hero makes Disco Elysium one of the most compelling, uniquely immersive, and unforgettable games of all time. Unless you don't like reading. First up, let's talk about the writing because wow, just wow. Disco Elysium is like reading a novel where you're the main character. The dialogue is sharp, packed with humor, philosophy, and social commentary. The game doesn't shy away from serious topics like racism, politics, addiction, and trauma. But it does so with a blend of levity and depth that keeps you engaged. The character interactions are written with such nuance that every conversation feels deep and meaningful. Whether you're chatting with a suspect or an everyday citizen, you get a sense of their personality, backstory, and motivations. It's like the writers crafted an entire world filled with complex characters that respond dynamically to your choices, making the narrative feel alive. This level of detail is what makes Disco Elysium not just a game, but an experience that resonates long after you play it through. And the main character? When you create him, you don't just choose stats, you pick what kind of disaster you want him to be. Want him super perceptive but with zero impulse control? Done. Or maybe he's a human calculator but lacks basic social skills? Check. This isn't your typical RPG where you're building a hero. You're assembling a shambling, flawed human. And it's a heck of a lot of fun. Each of his skills comes with its own personality too. If you pump points into empathy, for example, he's suddenly going to start caring a little too much about what people think of him. Stack points in encyclopedia, and bam, he's now spewing random historical facts no one asked for. Like some kind of hyper-focused trivia bot. It's a design choice that doesn't just give depth to the hero's persona, it turns Disco Elysium into a playground for personal disaster. Now, let's switch gears and look at gameplay mechanics. This game is all about skill checks, and trust me, it's refreshing. Instead of traditional combat mechanics, your character's abilities influence dialogue and interactions. Got a high conceptualization skill? You'll unlock unique dialogue options that let you think outside the box. But here's where it gets interesting. The skill checks aren't just numbers on a screen, they represent different facets of your character's personality and choices. For example, if you decide to boost your empathy skill, you might find yourself sensing the emotional undercurrents in conversations, leading to deeper connections with NPCs. On the flip side, focusing on authority might give you an intimidating presence, but it could alienate characters who value empathy. The core gameplay loop in Disco Elysium revolves around investigation, exploration, and choice-driven narrative progression. Here's a breakdown of the loop. Dialogue and skill checks. You initiate conversations with the various NPCs in Revolutionized, gathering information and learning about the world. Then, in the dialogue, they offer different skill checks to offer the player different ways of solving a particular problem. Succeeding or failing these skill checks leads to branching choices that push the player to go explore option A or B or even C. Exploration. You then scavenge and investigate your chosen path, or even multiple ones if you feel like it. Players explore the city of Revolutionized, inspecting objects, scavenging for items, and uncovering clues. The environmental storytelling reveals more densely packed narratives and details, offering insight into the setting and story. You then unlock new areas to progress the investigation, and every interaction you make, whether you're chatting or investigating, gives you XP to upgrade the hero's psyche or talents. Character development. The player chooses skill upgrades, for example, logic, empathy, physical instrument, that influence their problem-solving approach and further shapes the protagonist. And repeat. These new upgrades allow you to have better conversations with more NPCs, giving you access to new dialogue and new areas to explore to progress the story and the investigation until you finally solve the murder case. This loop is supported by stellar writing, immersive world building, and meaningful choices, creating an addictive experience that encourages deep exploration and replayability. It's not just about solving the murder, it's about crafting a unique, deeply personal journey through the mind and world of the detective. And in all honesty, I'm not the type of player who typically replays a game once I completed it, especially not a story-driven one, but I just can't get enough of this special game. It really is that special. In certain all-time great games like Undertale or Stardew Valley, the brilliance lies in their dedication to a clear and simple core gameplay loop that stays true to the principles of game design. What elevates this game is the laser focus on the player experience. Every design decision reinforces the core loop without unnecessary distractions. This clarity allows players to engage deeply and intuitively, turning simple mechanics into a profound, memorable experience. By respecting the fundamentals of great game design, balance, player agency, and meaningful progression, the developers transform their tight, focused loop into a timeless masterpiece. If the story and dialogue paint a picture of Revolutionized, the city the game is set in, the art literally paints it, like some tragic mural from an artist in the throes of an existential crisis. The visuals are moody, dreamlike, and perfectly capture the down-and-out vibe of the city. It's like you're walking through someone's watercolor fever dream, complete with smoky, muted colors and just enough grime to remind you that you're in the middle of an urban tragedy. And it's not just beautiful, it's purposeful. The art feels like an extension of the game's themes. The gritty color palette and rough textures mirror your character's own emotional state, showing us that everything in this world, people, places, memories, is slightly broken. There's no glimmering hero in armor here. It's just a guy who's fallen apart in a world that's struggling to piece itself together. Speaking of piecing things together, let's chat about the level design. The game isn't open world in the traditional sense, but the areas you explore are packed with detail and interactive elements. Each location feels alive and responds to your choices. You're encouraged to poke around, uncovering secrets and clues that deepen your understanding of the narrative. And here's a fun fact. The game's design is so focused on exploration that even failed skill checks can lead to interesting discoveries. It's a win-win. Disco Elysium isn't just a game, it's a chaotic, brilliant character study wrapped in an RPG. It's a game that hands you a mess of a protagonist and lets you revel in its failures. You're not here to win per se, but to experience his story and the bizarre, sometimes heart-wrenching, sometimes hilarious world he inhabits. It's a reminder that sometimes a game doesn't need to make you feel powerful. It just needs to make you feel something. Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed this analysis, make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what other games you want me to dive into next. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.